So, for my presentation, I'm going to be talking about John Harris and the distinction between treatment and enhancement. I'm going to start off of talking about the prompt that I've chose. It is to critically evaluate Harris's full argument. First is to explain the argument. Second is to criticize the premise and the argument by generating an argument, a counter argument of your own against the premise, and demonstrate your philosophical skills. My thesis is that Harris's moral distinction of treatment and enhancement is unclear, and the framework of enhancement is limited. So, what is the stake? Why is this important? I understand that Harrison's argument demonstrates that treatment and enhancement can be morally understood as the same, and the attempts to cure dysfunction and attempts to enhance function, where the enhancement protects life or health. But my goal is to argue how Harris's undermines different forms of enhancement due to his definition of enhancement of protecting health or life. So, explaining the philosophy. The premise that or the argument is if there is no moral distinction between treatment and enhancement for protecting life or health, then some forms of eugenics are morally obligatory. Second is there's no distinction between treatment versus enhancement doing versus allowing harm. And therefore, some forms of eugenics are morally obligatory. So, for this explanation, my example would be vaccinations and how they could either be used as a treatment or enhancement. But for this case, those who are vaccinated have an enhancement of some type of immunity. It is injected in their body for their protection. But in terms of a utilitarian aspect here, is that those who are getting vaccinated are benefiting are creating a net benefit for everyone else, that there's an obligation that that everyone has the attempt to protect those around them by getting vaccinated. um, Therefore, the attempts of curing dysfunction and enhancing function is the same thing, because at the same time, if you're trying to get a treatment, your best benefit, or the reason why most people want to have some type of treatment, is mainly for their own benefit of protecting themselves or enhancing their quality of life or their health. So that's why Harrison probably believes that there is no distinction, especially with regarding of gene therapy, where gene therapy is used to enhance and prevent some kind of disease that a child could have. What the difference between of treatment, right? You're preventing someone from getting the disease, or you're trying to help. However, my criticism to this is towards premise two. There's no distinction. No, there's no such thing as distinction between treatment versus enhancement of protecting life or health, doing versus allowing harm. But I'm going to be focusing on the treatment versus enhancement and protecting life or health. So I am criticizing the way that he has structured enhancement of for protection, life, or health. What does that mean? What is he trying to argue about protection, life, or health, right? For him in the reading, he describes it as more of protection of life, of a form of increasing life expectancy. He sees, again, with the treatment and enhancement of like no distinction, doing versus allowing kind of aspect of how death is portrayed, right? So he says that death postponing versus saving a life has no difference. It's the same as treatment versus enhancement. However, the term the quality of life isn't based on how long you live. It is based on the person and how they feel. Saxon has talked about this. People with disabilities have a different view of quality of life, and it doesn't have to be based on numbers, but it's based on how they feel and how personally they feel. But Harrison doesn't believe that. He sees it more of like, I'm going to postpone someone's death, like extending their life versus saving life. It's the same thing. but I don't believe that. I feel like there is a moral obligation to treat someone in attempts to reach baseline of health versus oh, I'm going to try to increase your life by um, enhancing your abilities already from baseline. Um, there is a moral difference. See, Harris believes that there is a distinction of cosmetic enhancement, but undermines the idea. He doesn't want to talk about it, mainly because he says that it manipulates intelligence and um, that it's not in terms of gene therapy to prevent disease, that people are just going to pick out traits that they want, and overall, it's not going to help um, the, I guess, protection of life or health. However, example of cosmetic enhancement I would see is nose injury and receiving treatment versus rhinoplasty or an appearance satisfaction. So, for me, I feel like as an obligation to treat the person who has received or has gotten injured by their nose is to treat the dysfunction to reach the baseline. That is what treatment is, right? Um, but I feel that those who have received a rhinoplasty may feel a self confidence and mental health. I think he does agree that there is a definition distinction. However, he says it's the same thing of feeling, of the moral of the satisfaction of enhancing your function for moral health. Um, and Yes, I do believe that. And I don't think that for Harrison specifically, he doesn't clarify the protection of health or life clearly enough. For my conclusion, I find that he needs to fine tune the reason of inclusion of cosmetic enhancement. There isn't a reason why not to, because every single day, different forms of procedures of enhancement is being placed, and cosmetology is up there. So it sort of defeats his purpose of protecting life and health and longevity of someone's health. So again, like anytime there's a procedure or medical use of drugs, um, could be used as a harmful in terms of enhancement. And I feel like as a utilitarian, he's trying to combat that of um, less negative consequences for the benefit of everyone, right? And again, the obligation of treatment itself is to be used to benefit to individual or population, eventually to reach baseline, but also the obligation to help someone. Versus enhancement is seen to have a positive or negative consequences, even if it's used correctly. But the intention itself is different from what Harris is trying to argue. So thank you for listening to my argument of Harris and the distinction of enhancement and